90% of consumers read online reviews before visiting a business. What do people see when they look you up online? We give you the tools you need to take control of your reputation. Send surveys to your customers via text message with Testimonial Collector. Get 5-star reviews on all the major platforms like Google, Yelp, and more. Track what people are saying about your business with Reputation Manager. Respond to comments and turn negative reviews into happy customers. See what your competitors' customers are saying about them with Competition Tracker. Learn great marketing tactics and what it takes to stay on top. A bigger social presence means more connections. Automatically generate and schedule engaging social media posts with Social 365. Build trust, boost sales, and grow your business.
Hey, and welcome listeners. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Live Show. And I am your host, Rose, the founder of McDonald Bookkeeping and your host of the Entrepreneur Live Show. And thank you for returning. Thank you for everybody who has been subscribing and faithfully following the show. How I appreciate you. All of you who are watching or watching on the replay on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitch. Yes, we are live on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch, and some of your very, 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 very favorite podcast channels like iHeartRadio, iTunes, and so much more. Be sure to go to my webpage, entrepreneurlifeshow.com, and you can check out all the upcoming guests as well as the past guests. And do we have some great guests that are here for you, entrepreneurs? I always want to make sure I give a major shout out to my sponsor, Marketing Out the Box, Sean Maddox, who you will see did a great intro commercial for me, as well as our exit commercial. So if you want to get some great visibility, get your SEO, your target marketing up right, check out Marketing Out the Box. Go to my website, entrepreneurlifeshow.com, click on his link, and bam, you are there. Don't forget, if you are watching on YouTube live, make sure you jump in on the super chat, comment. Our guests will be able to see the remarks or the questions that you may ask, or just leave a question and say hi. And or if you are listening on your very favorite podcast, again, always ask questions. I can ship them over and make sure our guest sees. Or, just ask anything you want. If there's a certain guest you want on the show, I will work hard and try to get that guest for you. So what is our show about today? So as you know, as entrepreneurs, I am an entrepreneur. I like to bring great guests that can bring you education you can connect with and something that we can all learn from. So every guest that I've had on the show, I specifically look for that type of guest. Some people ask, hey, can you get this type of guest on the show, or this business owners? Well, I get them for you. So today I have a great guest, which is Shalanda Tookes Wilder. And what is so great about her, and I think for right now, especially life after COVID, but I guess you could say probably any time, is when you're pivoting back into that change in career. Maybe you were an employee working for someone, and now you're an entrepreneur. You're going back into that interviewing, that having to get it together, maybe the educational, maybe changing and pivoting from being, maybe you're still an entrepreneur and you're an employer, or you just really need the skills as an employer to invest in your company to learn what type of people do I need to get that I can educate or that are trained. But there's so many avenues. So let me tell you, you can take this information that you're about to get and connect with this person, whether you are employed with somebody, whether you are an entrepreneur, you're in college, whether you are in school and you're taking courses on knowing how to get out there and get into the career world, the entrepreneurship journey. So anyway, let's bring her onto the platform and welcome her on, Shalanda Tookes Wilder. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am
Thanks
wonderful.
for having. Yeah,
So,
I appreciate you.
So let me tell you, as I provide accounting services, and which I thought that this, your background, your education, and what you can offer is an extremely great tool. And I'm of course, I want you to tell your story and kind of like how you got into this. That'll be my first question. But why it's so important is, especially in this time right now, it is so crucial that because people are either one, they are going back to school or thinking, what can I do? I can't afford to go back to school. And or if you were a business owner and maybe now you have to go back into the workforce, or if you were in the workforce, you're like, geez, now I want to be an entrepreneur, or going kind of back into both. This, let me tell you, this is a great informational subject tool. So if you don't mind, if you can kind of first tell our guests, or listeners rather, how did this become your journey of choice in career? And then we can get into everything that you do.
Okay. So I started out in psychology. I went to school thinking I was going to be a family therapist. I actually finished my doctorate and did my interning. Now, while I was interning, I noticed that a lot of people's personal happiness was tied into their careers. And I also had an interest in working with organizations. And I thought to myself, how can I work with employees to make people happy so they come home and they're not yelling at their spouse when they get home because they're frustrated with a bad day at work? And how can I work with organizations? So I did some research and I came across organizational psychology, and I learned about career coaching. In the meantime, I was going through transitions myself with my career because I'm a military spouse. So every year and a half or so, sometimes less, can you believe it? I was looking for a new job. And so everything that I teach my clients and work with all my clients, I've gone through it. I worked as mental health therapist, behavior analyst. I was in retail. I also did human resources. I did recruiting. So I use everything I learned and I bring that to my clients so that they can have I want to say an easier time with their career search, because job hunting is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, from the application all the way to salary negotiation. It's a ton of work. It can be exhausting. And I just use what I learned and I put that into my practice. So it's kind of or it's like when the clients come to me, they're getting an insider's view because of the fact that I used to be a hiring manager. So I can tell them what the hiring managers like and what they strongly dislike.
What would you give for people who are we're in the workforce, and then you're like, I want to start my own business. I want to have my own business. And there is such a big difference of being on the other side of the desk and being interviewed as a potential candidate employee, and then being the employer looking for the potential candidate. And, what kind of insight would you give them as if you are coming back into the workforce? What is the best tactic for interviewing skills, or what they will be looking for? Because a lot of people, obviously, if you go back into the workforce, you're more than likely going to the workforce for the business that you have. Like, I have an accounting background. I left the accounting background, and so now I'm working for myself. But then it becomes uncomfortable if I have to go back to the workforce. Will people hire me? One, because they'll see I'm highly skilled, but two, will I potentially take their client? Or it's sometimes how stable am I? Am I just, needing to get out here right now to grow my business again? Like, what are kind of like the do's and don'ts if you're going back into the workforce?
Yeah, I actually came across something like that when I was a hiring manager. I was an HR assistant at that time, and I was working closely with the hiring managers. And we had a guy come in and he told us about his business. But the
Mm-hmm.
way he told us about his business, the hiring managers felt like he was going to steal the company's customers. So if you're going to talk about your business, always share, and this is with anything, anytime you're talking about your background, you want to share what I call your organizational message. Your
Mm-hmm.
message will state why you're a fit for that company. So first you state why you're qualified. Then, secondly, you talk about what skills you bring to them and how it will benefit them. And then, thirdly, you add on other skills that aren't required but are helpful. So there are three things
Oh,
that you would bring. Yes.
I've never looked at it like that. That third
Mhm.
one that aren't required that are helpful. So basically, you should be doing your research on the
Yes.
company that you are applying to. Where
Exactly.
they're applying. And like many
Exactly.
people just put out their resumes, and you forget sometimes. And that's so unprofessional. I've seen that as I was on the part of when I was working for other people, hiring, and they would say, which job was this again?
Right. Yes. That's a no-no. And that's what I teach people. So I like the number three. So I teach in threes. I have a step where we work on your organizational and your time management skills. Then
Mhm.
we go into your branding. That's the big word these days. That's when you work on the organizational message. Why are you leaving your last employer? Why should I hire you? We practice different questions that the employers and the hiring managers may ask. And thirdly, my third step is practice, 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 because while you don't know what questions you will be asked, you have to prepare yourself so that you're
Mhm.
not sitting there, thinking and just seeming unsure. So when you
Mhm.
practice your message, you come out with that much more confidence. Even if you haven't answered that question during your practice time, you're
Right.
able to talk about yourself so well that you can just come off with confidence. And that's what employers like. They like to know that they're going to be working with someone who's confident, and this is your likability factor. They want
Mhm.
someone that is going to come in and someone that they'll like. I remember when I transitioned to one of my
Mhm.
many jobs, when I transitioned to human resources, I had access to a lot of files, right? And
Mhm.
I was going through a file and I saw my name. And of course, I looked at it, and
Right.
the hiring manager wrote across my file, "I like her." She didn't have anything about she's qualified, because she said, "I like her," across my resume that I brought into the interview. And
Hmm.
why? Because I had my message, why I'm qualified, and I told them the skills that I had. And then I brought in extra stuff. So the extra thing that I brought in was my psychology background, my mental health background.
Ah.
They saw that as a benefit to being able to work with all the people that came through the doors of HR every day.
So
Yeah,
it
it's all
almost
about the
sounds like
message.
how business owners have, you want to create your pitch, your brand.
Hmm. Yes.
It's almost similar in a sense.
Mhm.
So and as far, let's say on being on the other side, because I know you do courses you have where you implement, and I want to bring your website on in a bit so you can show all the courses that you do and programs that you provide. And I'm sure that then you provide some type of courses or training to employers, because a lot of employers don't know how to interview or the right question to ask for an interview, or even when you're putting up a job placement ad. And I say that because I've been on the other side, and I've said to myself, geez, I feel like I'm interviewing myself, or,
Mm-hmm.
they're not asking the right questions, or things that aren't even designed for the position that the ad was for. So, what do you say to those type of business owners, or us entrepreneurs, when looking for someone? What things that we should be putting in place to understand what we're even looking for, to even know what questions to ask? How do you do that? How do you put us in that direction?
Yeah, so I actually, when I work with organizations, I work with them on productivity for their employees and employee engagement. Now, if an employer does come to me with needing help with like basically staying focused, I would say they need to look at previous job ads. So this is something we practice in HR. Whenever a position is posted,
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, and that we should be looking at the previous job ad and looking at what the person, if someone is in that seat currently, looking at their current duties, because the job description can change. And we saw last year how so much changed. People started being forced to work from home. And
Yeah.
and that takes a little tweaking when they start looking for people. They'll need to tweak, organizations will need to change up their job ads a little bit. So they'll need someone who can work by themselves and doesn't need to be micromanaged. They need someone who can be independent. So I would tell them, look at previous job descriptions, look at what the person is doing now, and then you use that to create your job ad. And just so you all know, jobs are, while you're in the job, your job duties can change, even if it's slightly. So make sure that you're keeping your resume, even if you're employed. I don't care if you've been there for a year or 10 years, keep your resume updated. That way, in case you want to get promoted, or unfortunately, most of my clients lately have been displaced due to COVID, and they have to start all over, and they have resumes they haven't updated in 20 years because they thought they were going to retire with their company. So
Right.
always keep your resume updated with your current duties and relevant duties.
How many resumes do you think a person should have? I mean, for in the accounting, and I only know what's related to me and what come before me when I used to help assist and hire people, but I really never understood that portion. I know for accounting, I said, okay, so I don't want to overqualify myself if I would apply for a certain position, but yet underqualify myself. And there's so many different fields of accounting, and it's the same as if you were getting into a management field, a restaurant management. And some people just have that one resume or that one objective line. Do you think that that's important, that is where it comes into understanding the position, researching the company? Or is it really just, really making sure that you research what the ad read and define and change up your resume? Should there be more than one resume? How many? Some people I've seen have 2 and 3 pages, and I used to look like, oh my God, I'm not going to read all of this.
Right, yeah.
And then some things are like saying the same thing over and over again, and just fancifying what you did by, if you didn't want to put customer service, so you would say something, fancier, but really you just did customer, or like if you were a cashier, you wouldn't say you were a cashier. So
Right.
how important is it to have one resume, or change up the resume, or how it should really look?
Well, there's no limit to the resumes you have, because you want your resume to be specific to every job you apply for. Yes. That's one of the reasons why job searching or career searching is so much work, because it's very important that you send out an accurate resume. And by accurate, I mean a resume that reflects the job duties that that particular job is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give you an example. I had a young lady, she sent me, while I was hiring for an office position.
Mm-hmm.
And she sent me a resume where her objective was talking about doing medical coding. So it looked like she was just throwing a resume out there to everybody, and where would it land? Just throwing up a deck of cards. Where is it going to land? And that's not the way to do your job search. because you're wasting your time, you're wasting the hiring manager's time. So when you do your resumes, yes, you're in accounting. Let's take you for example, Rose. There's so many fields, subfields in accounting, right? But
Mhm.
all the job ads are not going to be exactly the same. There's going to
Right.
be some different points on there. So
Mhm.
you want to take some of those keywords, take those points, put them in your resume. Don't copy and paste. Seen that
Ah,
too. That's not good. Take those
right.
points, put them in your resume. Yeah. And do that for every job. If you're filling out 50 applications, you know what? You don't have to. I'll say you don't have to change your resume every time, but make sure your resume is reflecting points off the job description.
So because you help organizations, do you help train them in the part of the organization to where I'm assuming they have to understand their business role, their business objective, what their business is doing to know how to staff?
Right. So I come in and let's say the last time I had an organization, um, the last time I helped the organization, they needed me to help one of their employees with productivity and their time management. They specifically asked me to help this person with their time management. So what happened is this person received a promotion,
Mhm.
and with the promotion came more duties, and he was having trouble keeping up. So the organization, they didn't want to demote him. He was a good employee. So
Mhm.
they asked me to come in so I could teach him how to do his work, prioritize. I had to teach him, to teach him how to prioritize. And that's what I do is I don't know if you saw, I call myself the queen of time management.
Right.
So, because I'm a very organized person and you have to be organized to look for a job. And that's me teaching my time management course right there, my goal setting course for job hunters. So, yeah, so you have to set your goals, manage your time. Some people don't like the word time management, so manage your priorities.
Ah.
Mhm.
That's a different way to put your priority.
Yes, your priorities. Yeah.
So I often say this to clients that I have when they're bringing people on and hiring. Is when because you're talking about time management, is when you are hiring, some people look at the rate of pay, not looking at really the experience and the quality of work that you're going to get out of the person you're hiring. So you can have an employee and they think, oh, I can get this one employee. They're going to answer the phone and they're going to do the bookkeeping and they're going to run to the post office and be my girl Friday. And so, but I usually say, you usually end up losing money because you're not getting someone specific to that field, because you'll probably save time if you get somebody qualified in
Right.
that field than somebody who's having to play all these 3 or 4 diverse roles. I don't know how much you agree with me on that, but that's just, I usually tell from the little learning I do from working with people in HR, when you are looking at training employers and guiding them, is that one of the things that you express to them? Sometimes having people multitask, you can lose a lot of time. And for me, when I worked with people, I usually came in accounting, but then somehow I ended up being, working with purchasing. Oh, go talk to Rose, going to the front desk, answering phones at the same time, doing human resource stuff. And it really took away from what I was hired to do. So it was taking longer to get all this stuff done, but they thought that they were getting in the long term, if I wasn't getting overtime, they were having to increase my salary
Hmm.
because I was doing all these other things. I'm like, I want more money. So they really didn't save any money at all. How do you break that down and explain that, to employers on really getting the quality out of the work for the people that they're hiring?
Yeah, one point that I usually make is the point that when an employer shows a vested interest in the employee, And by contributing to their growth in some way, you'll have happier employees.
Mhm.
So if they are using an employee for other job duties and not training them, then they're increasing the likelihood of having a disgruntled employee.
Mhm.
What the employer needs to do for this is to offer some sort of incentive. And a lot of times employers, lately I've seen a lot of employers offering more training
Mhm.
and bonuses to employees. So it's very important to offer people some sort of incentive and thank them. People like verbal praise. So even thanking someone in front of the office staff during the meeting, that's a little bit of an incentive to keep them motivated. But actually investing time into training them is more beneficial, because what happens when they get disgruntled, they start talking to other employees, and
Right.
this spreads like a virus around the company. So you want to keep employees as happy as possible, invest in their training, and one company even ended up hiring a temp to take on extra duties. So because they didn't want to pay for insurance, if you take
Right.
someone on full time, you have to start paying off benefits.
Right.
So they had a temp come in, and sometimes employers, I know in the government system, they're not allowed to, it's specifically in the books that they're not allowed to work an employee in a different section for more than, I want to say, 50% of their normal job duties. So in
Mhm.
the government sector, I've seen them put employees over in this section for a couple of days or a few hours. They have to be very careful about doing that. So it's best. And they did end up hiring an intern after all,
Mhm.
because employees get upset, they start filing reports. So it's important for the organization to invest in the employees' learning if you want them to take on more duties, invest in their training.
How important do you think are there to be? Because I know I've worked for, I'm old. I'm in my 50s, and I don't recall anyone that I've ever worked for that had continual company meetings and or it's like usually when everybody's pissed off or you lost an account or something like that, then all of a sudden we should have a company meeting. But otherwise, like, they didn't have these recurring company meetings, to even take any type to hear what employees had to say, or even to share how the company's growth is, what we're doing. It's like they're just employees, and it's just business owners are running a business. How important it is that to have that type of engagement, and continually supporting, allowing your employees to know that they are part of the company, but because you're sharing the experience of what's happening with the company.
Yeah, it's very important. That goes back into investing in the employee. So you want the employee to know what's going on with the company. So there's a branch of psychology called change management.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that people are very resistant to change. However, if they are brought into the process early on, their unhappiness with whatever the change is decreases, as opposed to employers keeping employees in the dark about what's going on. People needs, we go to jobs for how many hours a day, a week for our lives? It's like a second home for a lot of people.
Right.
And you want to feel at home, you want to feel needed, you want to feel as though you're making an impact. And you
Yeah.
also want the employer to feel and to show that they care about what you are doing. So it goes both ways with the employer relationship.
Now, because I provide payroll services, I usually have this struggle with many of my clients is the onboarding part and the HR and bringing employees on.
The
People
favorite
just
part.
have an application
Mhm.
and they think that's enough. And so, and then what they can provide me as a payroll person. And so, I usually tell them I'm not I'm not supposed to have this information. This is all I need for payroll, because there's certain things that people are not supposed to see. That are certain things that are locked up in a cabinet, certain things that are in the employee file, and then certain things that a contractor like myself running payroll is to have, versus if there was someone working in their office as the payroll person or the HR person. But people don't, it becomes a struggle when I ask them, did they sign an employee company handbook? Do you have one? You know, are you following the company handbook? Do you even know what the company handbook says? The orientation of explaining, because some people just sign and don't read, employees, and or job offer letters. So all of those things in place, you know, is that something that you also help and guide on it? And if you can explain to our listeners the importance of really putting those things in place, and then even understanding what's in it, if you're going to have people sign it, and then if you follow along with it.
Yeah, that's, onboarding was one of my favorite parts of working in HR, because I was a new employee so much. I personally knew how it felt to be the new person that didn't know anybody's name, that didn't know the company culture. You go into a business and all you know is what you read on the internet, and the
Right.
people saw walk by while you were waiting to be called in for your interview, So one thing, let me give you one tip. When you are going in for an interview, if you are sitting in the lobby with the receptionist, chat up the receptionist and, learn what you can about the company. So I used to do that. So anyway, so it's very important in onboarding to take people through and it's sad to say that people don't read. So sometimes we have to hold their hand.
Yeah.
And I would set time aside, new employee coming in, I would set my morning aside so that I could be near them when they were trying to log on. Because nowadays everything is electronic. So the employee handbooks, a lot of times they're now online. You have to sign off digitally on each page.
Right.
So I made sure I was there to answer any questions. It was their responsibility to go through the handbook. I also did a PowerPoint presentation to introduce them to who the CEO was, who the owners were, who their points of contact were. And this was all in a PowerPoint slide presentation.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it also included their job duties, because people, I got a job, $20 an hour, all right. And they sign the paper and they don't read what the description says. They don't read the details. So I would take people through, and I didn't make it too tedious. I don't think so, but because they're so excited they just want to get to work. But I would have a couple of hours of onboarding with that person. And one thing that people commented on later before I left the company was they liked the fact that I would take the new employees around the building. We had 3 locations. They were within walking distance. We had the main building, the annex, and we had the warehouse. I would show them the different parts of this business you're about to work for. So when you hear someone say, can you go to the annex? They need to know where that building is located. So they're not walking around like, what is that? I don't want to ask anybody. I should know this by now. It's my second week here. So that was my favorite part, was the onboarding, because it just broke the ice basically.
So can you even explain what really onboarding is? So why ask that question? You might think it's a dumb question, or people might, but because I see that I've seen people in, they do human resource, or they, they put that in their business. I stay in my lane. And so, and I see what they're charging them. And later I have clients say, well, I've had somebody, or people I meet, I had somebody doing my HR. And I said, well, what are they doing? And they said, well, yeah, they do. And I heard this, they do my onboarding. I said, but what is in the onboarding? What is that? And a lot of them don't know. And so I said, onboarding can consist of a few things. You know what I'm saying? So and they don't even look at the contracts. And that this has only come up when it comes to a labor dispute and or a disgruntled worker, because you'll hire people. I find they look at the price of hiring an outsourced HR professional or person who looks for, your candidates for you, so you don't have to do that, that they don't necessarily understand what that really is. And later to come to find where some people, well, all they did was have them sign their paperwork, and then they were like, that was it. And I was like, well, that's all they're doing. They're just having them sign the W-2, the W-2, all this, the W-4, their employee handbook and stuff, and they were done. So then they get disgruntled. And I said, well, you really have to realize what is actually onboarding and what things do HR firms and career professionals, where they look for employees and help strategize what the benefit is and what to look for when you're hiring people to come in and help you. And only because I know two people that do this, that say they do this, and I'm not being disrespectful that I'm going to say that, but when I've gone through and worked with clients that they've worked with, and I'm like, they don't really do any of this. It's just like they're just doing some paperwork. And I find myself on the other end, is why it's been so important that I was looking for someone like yourself, picking up these pieces, and I get frustrated. I'm like, look, I just do payroll. This is payroll. I'm not supposed to be looking at your employee stuff. I'm not supposed to be having them sign paperwork. They don't understand the difference. So they, it becomes very frustrating on my end. That's why I really thought having you on this side is important. Or they'll say, well, I'm going to hire someone. Do you think they're qualified? I don't know. All I know is I'm doing the accounting. I haven't sat there to understand your business. I know your restaurant. I know you sell food, and wine. You get what I'm saying? So the importance of understanding their own business, and then what is, when they look for a person like yourself, what they should be looking for when they're bringing on these outsourced companies to help them with their employment relation, their for all the growth of their company, and getting their what do you call it, when people which people don't do anymore, but like people don't have company picnics anymore, people don't have monthly morale meetings or any of that. What are things that you can share that you can bring to their company, and then maybe we can go through some of your programs.
Oh, you know what? So there we have onboarding and we have orientation. And when I was in HR, I blended the two. Onboarding tends to be more of actually what it says. You bring the person on board, they're signing all this paperwork, the employee handbook, and the orientation goes a little bit deeper, because that's when you're telling them who they'll be reporting to, and you're orienting the person to the company and their coworkers. So it goes a little deeper than just signing paperwork. So I blended onboarding with orientation, and I think that might be where there's a little confusion or a little frustration.
Right.
I think it helps to blend the two, not just here's all this paperwork, sign it by Friday. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And that's what I find a lot of. There is that missing orientation piece. And you're the first one that said that. And when I asked and I said, well, what are you doing? I said, they did orientation. What are they doing? I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's go over your workshops and your skills, because I thought that was really kind of impressive. And your actual rates are extremely reasonable. I'm not saying that because you're here on my podcast, but because really they are.
Thank you.
So we can go over some of your coaching packages and stuff, and how you can help business owners and people just individually, and how they work. I have it on the screen if you don't mind, and we can maybe start with like the interview skills workshop and move on to your readiness program and that type of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So the interview skills workshop and the readiness program, they're almost the same thing. The goal is the same which is for the participant to learn, basically to market themselves, because that's what the job search or career search is. I say marketing because you have to basically brand yourself to be a certain picture of what the hiring company is looking for. So
Right.
I take people, again, the number three, those 3 steps. First, we work on your time management and your goal setting for a couple of days, because I can't tell you how many times I have had someone call me for a job where when I was a hiring manager, and it's like, we just talked 2 days ago. You're calling me back asking the same questions. So it's very important to be organized and have that time management down, because looking for a new job is your new job until you find what you're looking for. It should be taken as though it is a second job, because that's how much time it takes, or it can take, to find something else, especially with so many people losing their jobs in the past few years, actually. So
Mhm.
I teach them to be organized, time management, or manage their priorities. And
Mhm.
I teach them, or we walk through the message. There's that organizational message that's in 3 steps. And then we practice interview questions and how to bring everything together. You know, manage your time so that you show up for the interview a little early. You don't want to be rushing into the interview
Right.
because you got caught up in traffic or a
Right.
task you want to do before you left the house. So all that falls in line. Now the workshop, the it's a little shorter. We don't go into as much detail. It's kind of like an overview to help people get
Mhm.
started. For people who want a little bit more help, then we go into the program. The program is a little bit longer. We go into more detail. I allow people to help each other out, because it helps to talk out your message with
Yeah.
others, and someone listening, you know, they can tell you, oh, that sounded really good, or wait a minute, that it sounds like you quit jobs all the time. You might want to reword your exit statement. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So, and recently I going to job fairs and just meeting parents in the street. They ask, how should my child dress? He has an interview at
Ah,
Starbucks next week, And I said, you know what, Elle? And then also interviewing college students, I
yeah.
started seeing that people are so unprepared to
Yeah.
go into the workforce. And I thought something's missing. So this is why I have now the student career coaching to help fill in those gaps.
You know what?
And
I was
yeah,
impressed when I saw that because, I'm in my 50s, and when I was in junior high, they were teaching interview skills. We had typing classes. Um,
yes.
and we even had so they would what was called ROP. I don't even know if they have that anymore, because I'm way out of school. But we got to work and learn how to work, and all of these businesses would come to the junior high and to the high school, and you could work in hospitals, and you don't get paid, obviously, but and just like a regular employee, and you learn these skills. And so when I saw that, even in high school, and we had like college career courses, so you had from your whole high school year to change these different college career courses to determine, like, okay, now I know what I want to do. I think we started in our sophomore year. And then you can change, every semester if you want to try a different course. And
Mhm.
so I don't think they have that stuff anymore, because when my kids were in school, I was like, why don't I see this stuff? There's like
Yeah.
no preparing. And then you go to college and you have to figure out, now I have to know, like you were saying, how to prioritize, be time conscious, how to prepare for work
Mm.
life. But you got none of that. And as though college isn't even more difficult, and then having to figure out how to pay for college and stay in
Yeah.
college
Yep.
and volunteer, so that's a great offer. Like, seriously, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just excited about
Oh,
when
no
I saw
problem.
that on there. When I saw that
Yeah.
on there, so you can talk about that a little bit. It's so important. Schools
Mhm.
aren't really offering that anymore.
Yeah. So what schools have is they have, well, I'll say the colleges and universities,
Hmm.
they usually have a career counselor or the career department. and they'll offer people a little help with the resume, and they'll offer them classes to learn how to do interviews. But if you work with a career coach, and I even offer to teach this staff how to implement the student coaching, because some organizations think that it'll cost them more money, but it actually won't. But if they don't want to hire a coach, I can teach the staff. This is how a job search should be conducted. This is what these students should be learning. And it's not just a resume and an interview course. They need to learn the whole process. It's a whole process. Again, getting your time management together, branding yourself, and practice, practice, practice for those upcoming interviews. And a lot of students, this is a big thing with students. They don't have a lot of experience. So I also teach them how to dig into their background. You babysit siblings, there's some experience there. That's leadership skills right there. If you did babysitting, you mowed grass for neighbors. That's business and entrepreneurship skills right there. So I work with them to teach them how to dig into their background. What are you doing every day? You're on a team sport. There you go. Collaboration. Let's put that on your resume. Yeah.
Right. So now let's get into this is one of the things I actually wanted to bring up is when you are wanting to advance, and you could be wanting to advance from the current employer you're working with, and or just wanting to advance in your career, to go someplace else. And I know that in my day, like it seems so long ago, I feel like it, is that they used to pay for, I remember this, is they would reimburse you for school.
Yeah. Right.
If you took a course within the field that benefits the business that you're in and what your position is. And so where you do that, like employee changing organizations or changing position, how does that happen? Because you can get promoted, and you would think, and if you're promoted to more of a supervisory or management position, so if I was just a bookkeeper, then I went up to controller, and they say, okay, now we want to make you the finance officer, or overall, you're going to be over all of the accounting people. Your relationship totally changes now with everybody. So it's not just your promotion, the relationship, So how do you do that coaching part of it?
Yeah. So people, it depends on, obviously each case is unique. So for the people who want to get promoted, I tell people, keep that resume updated. And I was working with the young lady recently. She wants to get promoted within her company. And I was telling her, okay, you've been with the company how many years? Bring that up to them. Point out that you've always been in the top 2 of your department. Make sure you point that out, because her department had layoffs. And because she was always in the top 2 or 3, and most recently in the top 2, they kept her on. So I told her, bring that up when you're negotiating salary and that promotion. And I helped her write out her paragraph for that. So it's all about showing. You have to show them why. You have to develop your message to show them why you fit that picture of an employee they're looking for. And then bring in those extra skills, just a cherry on top right there.
Well, before, I want to make sure that everybody understands everything that you do. So I'm going, if you see me scamming kind of through your website, and you have where you actually go out and you can actually speak at organizations and, or like, I'm assuming high schools and colleges.
Yes.
So when you do that, is it more just a training session, or is it something as in your a workshop? Or do you change it depending on if you're at a high school versus a business, like coming into my business? Does it matter how many people you would have if, say, hey, I wanted you to come and speak to some of my clients? Would it matter how many people would be there and present? Is there a minimum, or, how do you go about that?
So it doesn't matter how many, because my goal is to have everyone do an activity, because that makes the learning stick better when they have to apply a skill. Why does this skill pertain to me? So I always have people, whether it's a big group or a small group, I ask the organizers to have some pen and paper available to each table. And I'll tell people, okay, so now you write down. So for example, I did a women's group and we were talking about goal setting. And I told them how to make a big goal more achievable by making it seem a little smaller, just breaking it down into steps. And everyone had pen and paper accessible to them. And I just said, you can just write down one step, just one thing to do. Because what happens is when we say, I'll take weight loss, since it was women, we tend to want to look at, take care of our figures a little more, right?
Yeah, right.
So I use weight loss as an example. And I said, let's say you want to lose 20, 50 pounds. That's not going to happen in a month. However, take one step that you need to do. Increase water intake, walk more, increase your activity. Take that one step, right? I think I did have them list out steps and pick one step to work on, because it's just too daunting if you're trying to do everything. I got to change my eating. I have to drink more. I got to start exercising. It's too much.
That, and that makes sense. It becomes overwhelming.
Yes. It is. It's overwhelming. So take one step. And I know what I practice is I carry around water and juices, fresh juice. So I can't have an excuse of why I ate my children's chips that they're supposed to have for lunch, because I'm carrying around my water.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, that helps. Any little thing helps.
Well, I think you really give some good advice. I really enjoy your website, but your workshops, your coaching, I think are really not only are very economical, but very precise. The packages, which are, I think for any small business, it would behoove them not to look, because I can see, as somebody working on the other side of the desk, and me working with companies who have employees and or switching and entrepreneurs on, it's a challenge, and people don't see the struggle until they're in a labor dispute or they're continually getting turnover. And I usually tell people and business owners, why do you have so much turnover? And so they don't think, oh, they're just unhappy. I'm like, but people don't usually, one company does not usually have that much turnover. That means everybody that's coming through their door, either you don't know how to pick the right candidate, or something's going on in your business that people aren't happy. It's like one or two of the three. So I think it's really crucial that people understand it, just coming from this side of it, this end of it. So I want to thank you again for coming on the show. And I hope before you go, before we end the show, if you could make sure, even though people are all going to see it on the web, I just saw somebody chat and say, what's the website again? All you're going to see it on the live, you guys, for those who maybe are listening versus watching. Shalanda will tell you where you can find her again, but if you choose, you can go to the website, entrepreneurlifeshow.com, and the interview will be there, or go to the YouTube channel. The interview will be there. Go to Twitter, Instagram. You can see it right on the screen. But let's do that for people who don't like social media, if you don't mind, where they can find you.
So the website, the short name is twg.expert. So you type in twg.expert and you'll see my business come up in the toolbar, tookeswilderguidance.com. But you just need to remember twg.expert. I'm also on social media, Shalanda Says. So you can type in at Shalanda Says You'll see me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Shalanda Says.
Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a great show. It was actually extremely informative, and important to have on the show. So if people aren't paying attention and taking a look and don't go to your website, you know, they're not real smart. Because I look for it. So thank you again, and for all of our listeners for always coming back and being great subscribers. I listen to you. I hear you. So when you guys leave comments, I do read them. As you can see, I have somebody on the show helping for you business owners looking for employees. And until the next show, go to the website. I will see you again. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye everybody.